you're not eating the right foods for you, or you're snacking all day long, a lot of those things just kind of naturally throw our bodies out of rhythm. I can't stress to you how many people got rid of headaches once they started having more minerals. Not only have we been taught to fear the sun, but we've gotten so far out of this natural rhythm because guess what? We can turn a light on in the house when the sun goes down. And now we've got these cool smartphones. And, even as a baby, like all these moms are like nursing and scrolling at the same time. And I'm like, bah, like his head is right there. How many people are outside wearing sunglasses and then they burn like crazy? Are sunglasses to fault for skin cancer? You are going to get different signals based on where the light is hitting, what your eyes are seeing, because what your eyes are going to see are going to affect different cells in the body. Like we can't really be shielding ourselves from everything. Like that doesn't really make sense if you think about energy.
Welcome to The Wave Forward, the podcast that dives deep into how technology shapes our health and well-being. From digital wellness to tech innovation to the effects of electromagnetic fields, we cover the environmental, social, and physical implications of technology. Ready to navigate the digital landscape with confidence? Set your dial to Discovery and tune in. You're listening to The Wave Forward. Dr. Nicole Huffman, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay, so I always love starting the episode with just a little bit of background information about you. I really want to know how you became a naturopathic doctor because I feel like unless you were raised that way, there's usually a moment where you kind of have a little bit of a wake-up call or a peek behind the curtain moment. So
Yeah, super common, right? I feel like a lot of us got into this stuff either to help ourselves or to help a family member or, for me, I feel like I was that kid growing up who had really bad asthma, really bad allergies. I felt like I had to be, I like couldn't really do gym class because I would always have to go to the nurse's office with like breathing problems. They have to call my mom, this whole thing. And then I couldn't really go to friends' house if they had animals, just like that kind of annoying stuff. And as I got older, um, I decided I wanted to be a doctor. So I started at Loyola University in Chicago and did a year of pre-med and was like, oh, I don't want to become this kind of doctor. And I didn't know that a naturopathic doctor existed at that time. So I kind of did a whole lot of careers. I was a photographer for a while, and then I ended up being a personal trainer. And I learned from like some very cool, very elite people in the industry, and they were doing a lot, not just with strength coaching and weights, they were doing a lot with supplements and what your body fat says about you and where you store certain things means certain things. And we were changing our clients' our lab results and liver values without really understanding any of that. And I was like, okay, I need like a more foundational knowledge of some of this stuff. Like if we're doing a little bit of liver supplementation and their enzymes come back better, and I don't really know what that means, I just felt like I needed more training. And of course, there was my own, like, I was a strength coach, super busy in Chicago, had a ton of clients, and I was always struggling with my own weight. And so that was a big driver for me personally. And turns out I had, hypothyroid issues, which could have been from the years of steroid, asthma medications. Who knows, right? There's so many low progesterone. My hormones were a mess. So I ended up going back to naturopathic school. And I remember some of my buddies who I worked with, we all kind of had like our own company. They're like, do you really want to go back to 4+ years of school? And I was like, I do, because I ultimately didn't really want to be a strength coach. I was way more fascinated by the nutrition and the supplements and everything else. So ended up going back to school and just diving deeper. I mean, school only shows you so much. There's this whole other world, right? So most of us were doing seminars every weekend on top of school. And I was still a strength coach at that time as well, all through school. And so that's kind of what led me, was like not only seeing, my own health stuff improve over time by just changing what I ate or trying this supplement, but also seeing what was happening with a lot of my strength coaching clients, which were really strength coaching clients trying to lose body fat, had nothing really to do with their overall health, but we ended up affecting it. So I just learned like the body is really smart and has so many ways of showing us what it is that it needs healing help on. And a lot of it is just giving the body that support or removing some barriers so the body can do it itself.
Yeah. So you're still working with clients now, right?
I am not a strength coach, no, but yes,
Yeah, of
I
course.
have been working with patients now. I've been working with patients now for over a decade, and
Wow.
um, but yeah, I already felt like I had so much of that one-on-one sort of experience. So I feel
Yeah.
like I've been working clients with clients since I was 20, so that's like 20 years. But yeah, really with like patients,
Yeah, which
for like 10, which is great.
that part of it is like it's kind of cool that you were able to get that part of it of like working with somebody and like learning how to communicate and all of that because sometimes you go see a doctor and you're like, okay, you don't know how to communicate with your patients, which is
Right.
a very important skill that you need. You can be incredibly smart and have all the knowledge, but if you don't know how to communicate it to your patient,
Yeah.
that's a barrier, you know?
Yeah, you do need to have like some emotional intelligence in there, right? Because yeah, you can be working with the smartest practitioner, but if they can't get it across
Yeah.
or it falls flat or the bedside manner isn't so nice and you're like, I missed the message completely.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Way too distracted by your lack of being able to talk to me. So yeah.
So, what do you like when a patient comes in and they're saying, I'm not sleeping well, I have anxiety, or like the common things that we kind of see, a lot of things that I think mothers in particular just kind of push off as being part of motherhood.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
what do you like when a patient first comes in? What is like the low-hanging fruit that you just, you start immediately with?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I feel like a lot of it is lifestyle, right? So in naturopathic medicine, we talk a lot about the determinants of health, which is you have to just have like some basic things in order, and the basic things end up clearing up like 90% of the symptoms. So before you go searching for the canary in the coal mine, right? Like it's some really weird diagnosis. It's like, let's make sure you're like hydrated and you have minerals and that you're sleeping and oh, you wake up 4 times a night? That's not great, right?
Yeah.
Let's make sure you're eating well and your blood sugar is balanced. I know you wanted to touch on circadian rhythms. That's a big thing too. Like if you're on your screen past sundown for hours scrolling and you sleep until 8 and you're missing the sunrise. I mean, right? Like there's so many kind of basics we could go over first. Nutrition is a big one. If you're not eating the right foods for you or you're snacking all day long, a lot of those things just kind of naturally throw our bodies out of rhythm, which can create really weird symptoms like
Yeah.
headaches and not sleeping well and not feeling energetic. I can't stress to you how many people got rid of headaches once they started having more minerals. I mean, it's like people have
Minerals.
struggled with headaches forever and it's like, oh, once they have salt with their water, they don't have them anymore, right? So I just think like you said, there is like some low hanging fruit we can address first before we're like, okay, we've got to go down the rabbit hole of something weird that might be
Yeah.
bothering your body, right?
I think it's really difficult for people to wrap their head around like the really simple things because I think we just live in such a complex world now where like
Mm-hmm.
it's like if you're not getting a plethora of medications or supplementations, kind of like medications, and you go into getting just like thousands of dollars of supplements, and then you realize like, oh no, actually, you just need to like follow the flow of the sun.
Yeah,
You know what I
right.
mean? Like
And it's
start
free.
there. Exactly. My mom's been preaching this for years. She was a nurse for I don't know, over 20 years, and then she had MS and then kind of went a completely different direction and recovered herself from MS and that she's been preaching this for years and I even struggled to like kind of come back around when did the circadian rhythm thing, like I feel like it's one of those things now where a lot of naturopathic doctors are talking about it. Was it part of what you learned, or is this kind of new information? Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry, I
There
was
we go.
muted. I was going to say that's so interesting because I actually felt like it was the opposite. I felt like we did not learn about it in school. I feel like most natural doctors don't talk about it. And it's such a foundational basis. And I have to admit that, I mean, I didn't really start focusing on it with my patients until the last couple of years, even though it is something that seems super foundational. Because if you think about it, it's not even, it's funny that it's kind of sort of like new information, right? Because it's old.
Right. It's
It's
ancient
like,
information coming.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's ancient. I mean, the sun is the one thing that our bodies have been entrained to for a millennia, right? I mean, it's such old information. And I think over time, not only have we been taught to fear the sun, but we've gotten so far out of this natural rhythm because guess what? We can turn a light on in the house when the sun goes down. And now we've got these cool smartphones and you can watch a movie when the kids go to bed, which I'm like not bashing on. Like
Right.
we all need to just like watch a movie sometimes. It's all good. But I think
It's
there
all
are
good.
ways to do it without really screwing us up. And if you're somebody who has sleep issues or anxiety issues, or your cortisol levels are really high, which just means you're stressed out all the time,
Yeah.
then yeah, you might need to take a hiatus from watching like really stressful shows when the sun goes down. And I I really started learning more about my nervous system after I had Asher, my son, because I realized that I couldn't watch certain things anymore. It was
Yeah.
like everything just felt so much more sensitive to me. I'm literally like covering my eyes and my husband's looking at me like, when did this start? And so for me, it was a very big, like, gosh, my nervous system can't handle this stuff, especially not at night. Like if there's a stressful movie and we have the ability to watch it while he's taking a nap on a Sunday, like that's way better for me than doing something in the evening and then trying to go to sleep. But everyone's different. I mean, my husband
Yeah.
can watch that stuff and still go to bed. Although I would arguably make the case that it's still not great for his melatonin production, his neurotransmitters, his cortisol levels, that even though he can sleep well, it's like, well, but there still could be underlying levels of inflammation, right? So I think there's a bridge or like what's the word? Like there's something that would bring you to deciding that this is a priority for you.
Yeah.
And for me, it was more like hormones, nervous system stuff. For my patients, it's, sleep issues. For another patient, it's anxiety, right? Like
Mhm.
there's something that's going to bring you to like, okay, I need to start paying attention to this more.
Right. Well, and just so when I started kind of relearning all of this stuff, I started really paying attention to how disconnected we really are, just like in the unconscious day. Like you get up, you put your shoes on, you turn on all the lights. Maybe the first thing you do is look at your phone and you just
Mhm.
start your day like that. You never
Yep.
you never touch the earth, the sun, you never see the sun. Like then you
Hmm.
get in the car, your windows are up, you have AC on, you have your sunglasses on, you're driving to work, you get into your work and my work doesn't even have windows you can open, not my work but my office that I come to. And
Yeah.
so then you're fluorescent lights all day. It's just like, oh my gosh. Like even being conscious of it, I'm realizing like, wow, I really have to put in effort to connect again, which is wild.
Yes, it's so true. Whereas like that's just what we did. This is going to sound so silly, but I kind of so we live on a ranch and we started with chickens, and I think chickens are like the gateway animal is what I've
Yes,
decided,
it's
because we
totally
quickly
true.
went from like chickens to ducks to horses to donkeys to it's just like gotten completely out of control. But I can learn a lot from chickens, which sounds so bizarre, but as the sun is setting, they put themselves away no matter where they are on our property. They put themselves away in the coop and they are asleep when the sun goes down. So asleep that if one of them doesn't make it in, they're literally just like sleeping on a bush somewhere. And you're like, let's go inside. There's mountain lions. And so in the winter, they sleep a long time. And in the summer, their sleep cycles are much shorter. And that's nature, right? That's basic. And yeah, a lot of us are not going to go to bed at like 5 p.m. when the sun sets in the winter. It just like doesn't make sense. But there is that like slowing down, that making bedtime a little bit earlier, doing less, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe resting more in the evenings. Um, and so I think we could learn a lot from the seasons of when is the season to push really hard and when is the season to rest more. And I don't know. I feel like chickens do a really good job
That's
of
actually very
showing
true.
you what's going on.
Quick break in the episode, you guys, because I got to tell you about the amazing sponsor, Aries Tech. Aries Tech creates cream of the crop, top of the line EMF protection devices that do not interfere with your signal, but all of their technology is actually backed by peer-reviewed, patent, and published research that has been going on for almost 20 years. They were originally funded a couple decades ago by the military to create a medical device that would help protect men and women who are working on radio signal towers without interfering with the signal, and have since become a consumer product as we have become more of a technological world. They're also used by professional athletes like Tiki Barber from the NFL Giants and Macy Barber from the UFC for performance optimization tools. You can go to their website, ariestech.com, and check out some really amazing studies where they've done some EEGs to show how these devices are affecting your baseline brain activity. It's really, really cool. I personally have one on me right now near me because I have my phone, my computer, my camera, everything going on all at once in an office building where everyone has their own Wi-Fi. So I don't mess around. Check them out, ariestech.com. Use code INTUNE, INTUNE, TUNE 30 for 30% off your entire order. So one thing I didn't really realize is that, and you can kind of correct me if I'm explaining this incorrectly, but like that the light cues are like from the sunlight, and kind of like the rhythm of the day is cueing like our cortisol levels, is cueing our like melatonin production. So what does that actually like look like? How do you explain what's happening with sunlight and the
Totally.
body?
That's a great question. The coolest thing about the sun is where it is in the sky is kind of telling our bodies to do different things at different times. And it makes sense if you think about it, because our bodies shouldn't be doing everything all at once or the same thing at every single hour of the day, right? So we've got different signals that are turned on and off based on really where the sun is. So if you're in a perfect world, right? You
Yeah.
would wake up, you would not look at your phone, you would go outside, you would sit outside, you would let the sunrise and all of that hit your eyes unfiltered, so no glasses, hit your skin, and it would signal to your body to make pregnenolone, which is our mother hormone that makes all of our other good sex hormones. It would tell our mitochondria, we're not in a fight or flight situation, life is good. Let's slowly increase cortisol, because it's a certain wavelength of a light that's so different than our cell phones, right? Or all the lights we're throwing in our house as we're walking to get outside. So don't do that. Like you wake up and then you like walk outside without hopefully tripping over anything and just, getting out there. And then, yeah, extra bonus points for like putting your feet on the ground. Sure. And then in the evening, and it's right, it's telling our body we don't need to make melatonin anymore. And signaling, it's way more complicated than that, I'm sure, but that's like the very basis. And then it's also telling our bodies, hey, the sun is going to get really bright and really intense later. So I'm also giving your body this cue to kind of prep your skin and get your skin ready for that really intense light. And
So
you
it's
should
like gonna
notice.
produce melanin to help.
Yeah, exactly. To help everything. And I have noticed, I mean, like I said, I live on a ranch. I'm outside all the time. I'm at 5,000 feet. The sun is intense. I'm a pale person. I'm like all Northern European. I am not really meant, I don't think, for the weather here. And I don't really burn because
Yeah.
I am out every morning. And then when I do go out in the midday, I'm not out for like hours and hours without wearing a hat or, at some point deciding like, okay, my skin's had enough. But I'm getting those cues in the morning at sunrise, and then we're out at sunset too. And those cues from the sun as it's setting are very healing for our skin. It's like healing from any of the damage that we potentially got midday. And then also telling our body to lower that cortisol, to prep for going to sleep, to start increasing those melatonin levels. There's so many cues going on, and you're going to get different ones depending on what time of the day. So even, I'm on Zoom a lot. I'm on this screen, and I have, certain software on my screen that makes it not blue. And I try to do all the things, but it's 90 degrees outside here. So my windows are closed with the air conditioning on. But I try to go outside multiple times a day to just get those light breaks and get the sun on my skin, to just keep telling my body, where are we during the day? What cues can you be telling my body? And I think honestly, like that's the best I can do. On the weekends, I'm outside a ton, right? So
Yeah.
you do what you can do. And if you are somebody who, like you, has a commute in the morning and you can have your windows down, so you're at least getting some of that light and some of those signals hitting your skin, then great. I think we all have to kind of start somewhere
Yeah.
before we can, if you have the ability to really change your day and alternate
Yeah.
it so that you're able to get, 4 hours of outside time, that would be amazing. I just don't know that that's realistic.
Yeah. We just bought a flower farm. So I've been getting up now in
Ooh,
the sunrise,
pretty.
going out there because it's so hot. We live in Texas, so it's, 103
Mm-hmm.
by midday.
Oh my
And I've
gosh.
noticed the same thing, like getting up early and going out into the garden. I've burned because I'm Irish. I burn like so easy, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
burning like so much less with
So
having
cool.
giving my body those signals. It is so cool to
It's
see.
super cool.
I love
I
it.
know it's neat. And I think it just makes a big difference. I mean, I've even just, and this maybe is like a whole controversial topic, but my son goes to an in-home daycare, so it's not a corporate one. And so I really have the ability to say, like, he doesn't need sunscreen. You guys
Yeah,
are outside for 30 minutes at a time. There's
right.
shade and sun. He's outside in the sunrise with us every morning, and he goes outside with us every night to feed the animals. So he's getting those cues. And you guys aren't outside for like an hour in direct sunlight. He doesn't
Right.
need sunscreen. Now, if you guys are at some point, you're doing some activity and it's then sure, here's like a tallow based one or a mineral
Yeah.
based one or whatever. And he's not burning. So we don't
Yeah.
need to slather all of that stuff. Like that's where he's getting his vitamin D, right?
Yeah.
And all of the other important signals. I think so many of us are stuck on like, well, the sun gives you vitamin D and that, but it does so many other things that I would rather his skin be able to soak up all of those other things
Right.
than, be trying to like ward it off with like the
Right.
horrible sunscreens that exist out there. And I play by those same rules, right? It's like if I'm going to be out on a trail ride for 2 hours in direct sun, sure. Okay. We
Yeah.
might need a little sunscreen. I'm not like, one of those
Yeah.
really
But I
extreme
mean,
people, but
I-
there's a balance.
yeah, I think you were actually talking about this on your social media, but about just like instead of trying to kind of hide from everything or trying to combat everything all the time, it's like giving ourselves and our children the tools to build resilience
Yes.
and to learn how to adapt to the natural world. Like,
Right. Yes, because we didn't used to like be afraid of the sun.
yeah,
And Jack Krause, who is like very big on circadian rhythms, I've learned a ton from him and he's been talking about it for a very long time. I mean, he has really interesting. He has a map of the United States on where the skin cancer is the highest, and it is not in the sunniest states. It's
that's
in states like
interesting.
Montana. And so it makes you just be like, is it sun? Is it the sun causing? And hey, look, my dad passed of melanoma. So I
Mm,
am so sensitive to that
yeah,
argument of like, you're not wearing sunscreen and it's going to kill you and blah, blah. I mean, I lost my dad way too young. However, I do think lifestyle plays a ton into it. And
yeah,
so it's again, it's not like an all or nothing. There's a middle ground. And I just think we can also kind of like think for ourselves, like, do I really need to put sunscreen on my child at 7 a.m. when they're going out at noon for 20 minutes? I don't.
yeah, yeah. That's so awesome. I love that. So, okay, I've heard this kind of said, and I don't know if there's a deeper explanation to it, or if you could speak into it all. But it's not like it, so the eye is where we're getting the most of the sun, right? Like the signals that we need. Our skin can also, but the is it the retina is where like the
Yeah.
communication's happening. But I also hear a lot like every cell in our body has its own circadian rhythm, right?
So from what I understand, and I haven't like I probably couldn't speak to like the super nuance of
Right.
every cell. However, I will say your eyes are, from what I've learned and experienced, the eyes are the most important.
Okay.
Meaning, if you're going to be watching a movie when the sun goes down, which I'm 100% guilty of. I usually wear like the amber or red glasses, which, yes, change the color of what you're watching 100%, but that's my compromise. And then in a perfect world, you would also cover up your skin so that like blue light is not also hitting your skin.
Interesting.
But it does seem more important to do the eyes because if you think about it, how many people are outside wearing sunglasses and then they burn like crazy? In fact,
Mhm.
some of the arguments is like, are sunglasses to fault for skin cancer? Because again, you've shaded the eyes, so you're tricking your body into thinking it doesn't need to produce all of the wonderful things to help protect you from the sun, right? And it's confusing. It's like, oh, is it nighttime? Is the sun setting? I mean, I'd like to think our bodies aren't like that, like confused, but I do think it is a very
Yeah.
confusing signal.
Yeah.
So from what I've seen then, it does seem very, very important to have the eyes be bare way more than the skin. But then you think about your skin and your cells. Not all cells do the same thing, right? Different cells are in charge of doing different things. So you are going to get different signals based on where the light is hitting, what your eyes are seeing, because what your eyes are going to see are going to affect different cells in the body too.
Yeah.
So I think you could
So like
probably
that's
get
kind of
like
the communication to all the cells to do their whatever they're supposed to be doing at that particular time of day.
that is what it seems like to me. And then I think there's also, of course, some communication with the light directly hitting the skin.
Right. Okay. That's really wild. So for like blue light versus like blue light blockers versus like the amber glasses, like do you have a recommendation for when to use those?
Yeah, from my understanding, so for anything as the sun is like just setting or just has set, I usually do amber. If it's like pitch black outside, whether it's before the sun comes up or after the sun goes down, I would go red glasses then.
Okay.
But when you're in kind of that like dawnish or like right after sunset time or right before, I think amber is great and they're way easier to see through. So that would just kind of make sense. Whereas like the red ones are a lot darker, so that would more mimic, like a fire if you're after sunset, right? That's the whole idea of like red light can like mimic like a fire essentially
Right.
in that same kind of light. Um, and then just for the daytime, I think is the best to just use like the blue blockers. And
Okay.
I personally wouldn't do amber during the day. I feel like
Okay.
that would be another kind of confusing signal. But
Right. It's almost like wearing sunglasses or something. Yeah.
correct. I just also feel like one of the problems with blue light, like I said, I'm using a software on my screen that makes everything kind of yellowy because we don't really have unopposed blue light in nature. That's not something that's like a natural signal for our bodies. And like there's a mouth device that has like just blue light and that can be really good for like killing infections. And so
Yeah.
like you can use it. I know they have one for like masks on the face for like acne or bacterial infections, but that's not something we really see unopposed, which is why the computers all the time and the cell phones all the time, if you're not using any sort of filter, I think can be really confusing for the body.
So what kind of software do you have?
Yeah, so I use one called Iris. Just Iris, IRIS, and it just turns your screen. I don't even notice it anymore, right? Because it's always been like that. But when it turns off, I'm like, whoa, it's like super blue. And then another good
That's
trick is
wild.
turning your cell phone screen red in the evening times or in the early morning, and that will help with that signal too. There's a lot of people that are like, I use my cell phone for an alarm, it just is what it is. Then it's like, okay, well, at least make your screen red, right? Do something that's, and not like the red that the phone kind of does when it turns, like you can make it super red by going into
Mm,
like, I think it's accessibility, and there's a couple little steps to get there. And that will kind of help that unopposed blue light and the signals that it's sending as well.
that's awesome. Yay.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to get that because I'm on my computer so much. Okay. So how did you start kind of discovering EMF and the role that it plays in
Yeah.
health?
That's a great question. So right after I graduated, I worked at a clinic in Southern California, and um, so California we know is like amazing in a lot of ways, and in my opinion, not so great in a lot of
Yeah.
other ways. And one of the things they're amazing in though is that they're really pioneers in the holistic health world for the most part. And so um I started learning a lot about EMFs there. There was a couple different conferences where they would talk about all sorts of really crazy topics that are super controversial. And one of them they would talk about was EMFs and how it's only getting worse with like the 5G towers, and that's only going to get worse too, and all of the different health issues that come along with that. And the scariest part about it all is that we can't see them, right?
Yeah.
And so many people are like, well, if we can't see it, how do I know it's there? And that I feel like is also the problem with all of the wonderful devices that are out there, like Aries does as well, which is like all these different, like the beautiful pen that you're wearing and the thing that
Yeah.
I have like right in front of my computer, is that you can't see what it's doing, right? And
Right.
so because
Yeah.
we can't see it, then we're like, oh, it doesn't exist. But we're starting to see this like mountain of research that's growing. And there's this great book called The Invisible Rainbow that talks about a lot of it as well. And so I've kind of been like experimenting with different companies and different, devices, and trying to measure sort of to see or how I feel.
Yeah.
And there was this one company, I'm not gonna be able to tell you the name because I honestly don't remember, but they offered us on trial at the clinic to do some EMF blocking devices on like the smart meters and the different things. And everybody in our clinic got really sick, and people really did not feel good. And
Whoa.
what the company said, was that it was like a detox reaction from blocking the EMFs. And we were like, that's interesting. And so the idea was then to start really slow and do like an hour and then increase and increase. But a lot of us, a lot of us use muscle testing and different energetic things. So a lot of us are sensitive in
Yeah.
general. And so we didn't know if it was that or if it was, but we started experimenting with different things, right? Because we were like, should we be feeling like that bad? I don't
That's
know.
so strange.
So strange. And so then of course there were all like the stickers you would put on your phone, and like, does that work and what's happening? And anyways, so I feel like that's when we really all started doing a deep dive, which was probably about 10 years ago. Um, and ever since then, I feel like little things have caught on, right? Like in a fertility clinic, they will say, don't have your cell phone in your pocket if you're a man, or, like, so I do feel like there's certain things that are kind of starting to click even in the very traditional
Yeah.
medicine, but I still don't think it's talked about nearly as much as it should be.
Yeah. It's so funny because I started out as an affiliate for Aries maybe like
Hmm.
4 or 5 years ago. And then I had the CEO on my old like a podcast that I just like a personal podcast that I had. And it was really mostly about business. Like I had like business people and, and so he came on and we did talk a little bit about the business, but then I really got to understand kind of the history of the product and it being, like a military funded thing from a couple decades ago and the whole thing. So I got really interested in it. And then like the EMF stuff, like I just slowly started unlocking and unlocking. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of topics, especially like with COVID happening and all of that. Like there's a lot of topics that were very controversial that like, but my mind about that was like, okay, everyone can educate themselves on those things and then make the right decisions for themselves, their kids, their family, all of that. With EMF, it's not really an option. Like it's
Yeah.
already deployed. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like it's already out and about and like
Yes.
we're living
Yep.
amongst it and like we didn't have
Hmm.
the choice.
Right.
And we were so worried about all of this other stuff and fighting for all of this other stuff that's also important. But and whether we felt like we did or not, we did have some sense of a choice, of what we
Yes.
did in those times. So yeah, that's when I started getting really passionate about EMF. It was like, okay, hold on a second, because we have to start kind of taking our power back in our own home because that's really the only place that we have a choice about this, you know?
It's so
And
true.
then building resilience in all of these ways so that our body can contend with what we're already living amongst.
Oh, absolutely. There's this website out there, and maybe you would know it more than me, but it tells you like what towers you're by, or like
Oh,
how
yeah.
many airport scanners you're by, or just all the different, cell phone towers and blah blah blah. And where we live, we're pretty rural, and so that's the benefit of having like land and a ranch, right? Is you
Yeah.
don't have neighbors that everybody has their Wi-Fi on and everybody's all around them, which I lived in for very long time in condos in downtown Chicago. So I like have seen the difference. And even when we lived in Orange County and we had, everybody's like on top of each other,
Mm,
like I saw my dog. He was like an anxious mess all the time. And I was like, is it the people or is it the Wi-Fi? Right? Like you just
interesting.
wonder, because you'd flip up your phone and there would be like 100 different ones you can connect to. And now where we live, there's not that much. However, still on my computer, still on my
Yeah.
cell phone, still, right? So there's still this level of, even as a baby, like all these moms are like nursing and scrolling at the same time. And I'm like, bah, like his head is right there. And so I just think that even if you do live in a place where there isn't as much around you, you have at your fingertips like a device that can be extremely harmful, especially to babies and kids. And so it's just really starting to learn ways to like arm and sort of protect yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, learning about the kids thing was really eye-opening because it was like, oh my gosh, they're so much more vulnerable than we
Yeah.
are. And we like
Mhm.
really have to be thinking about it, you know? So, and even though like, I'm a huge proponent of Aries, I love them. I'm also like, but also unplug your Wi-Fi. And when you're not using it,
Yeah.
like do everything you can
Yes.
do, don't just get the product. Yes, it's amazing that we can, put a slab of product on our neck or put one on our phone or put one on the computer, and that's going to like benefit us in this area. But like when it comes to kids and stuff like that, I'm like, do the best you can to just mitigate
Hmm.
as much as you can, because these are amazing. Like when we're out, I went to Phoenix, Arizona for a work trip last week, and I was amazed by like the amount of towers. Like there would be like three just right next to each other, and at school
Oh,
grounds, like I got a ton of videos of towers being in school grounds, like right next to the playground. Like, and where we live in Central Texas, we really don't have a whole lot of that. So it was like really like I was really paying attention to it. Like this is major
yeah.
cities, this is what it's like. And I could feel like I felt like disconnected. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
like it was like I was
Hmm.
draining. So I am like I love having this because I feel like when it's on me, I just like at least have that sense of like, okay.
Yes. Yes. I've
I
got this.
Yes, I have a little bit of something giving my, because the thing about the blockers, and that was, and I went through that phase as well, is like, okay, what happens when we put like a Faraday cage on our kid's head, like these beanies and stuff that we're putting on our head, because they're electrical beings and we rely on those electrical signals to communicate. So what happens when we're blocking the natural?
Well, that's the whole thing. I think when people think about EMFs, they're thinking about there's native and non-native, right? So
Right.
when we're talking about the dangers of EMFs, we're really talking about the non-native, right? The ones that like man has created. But there's like EMFs that are really beneficial, right?
Yeah.
And the native EMFs and like what comes off the ground and all of that. And so, yeah, I think you're so right. It's like we can't really be shielding ourselves from everything. Like that doesn't really make sense if you think about energy.
Right. And this is our world now. So we got to start
It
giving our
is.
body the tools it needs. And that's what, like what
Mhm.
you were saying about giving minerals and watching that. I feel like all of that plays into being able to contend with the technology that we're around, and the bandwidth that we're around all of the time, is like giving our body those tools and resources to just build resilience, build strength,
Yes.
and that way we're not constantly trying to fight it or hide from it or any of that we
Yeah,
got.
because that's not, and then what if the one chance you're like, oh, we want to go to Disney World? I don't know. Right
Right.
now, that doesn't sound like a
No,
fun
it
thing for
doesn't.
me, but like you decide you want to do that because your kid's at an age where that's what they want to do. They're gonna like literally just like collapse because you're surrounded by millions of people with cell phones and blah, blah, blah. Right. So it's like, yeah, it's like that ability to build resilience so that when you're in a area where you can't really control, which is a lot if you're not
Yeah.
at home, that you can tolerate that. You can have fun. You can make the most of life, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. I think if you're approaching life always in this like defending sort of like position, you're not, it just doesn't make sense. I don't feel
Yeah.
like that's a good like if we're talking about energy, that's not like a good energetic way to live, I don't
Right.
think.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so where do you treat people from afar too, or do
I
you?
do. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
talk a little
work
bit about your work.
your thing.
Yeah, your thing.
I do mostly remote at this point. There was just a need for it, and so that's sort of what happened when I left California. And then I do see patients in person 1 day a week in Loveland, Colorado, at a clinic.
I love Loveland.
But yeah,
It's
it's
so
just such a
cute.
happy name too, isn't
Yeah.
it? There's like hearts everywhere. What's not to love? Um, and but otherwise, yeah, remote all over the world, honestly. So there's a lot of time zones that I'm still trying to figure out where people are living and like trying to figure out the timing. But yeah, really all over.
So where do people go to connect with you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on Instagram. I am not a TikToker. I can't do it. I feel like Instagram is time
I
consuming
tried
enough.
multiple times as well, and it was like, no, this
Can't
is
do
not
it.
for
Yeah, I
me.
just can't do it. It's just I'm not a TikToker. So I'm just Nicole NICOLE NMD, which stands for Naturopathic Medical Doctor. So Dr. Nicole NMD at Instagram. And then my website's just drnicolehuffman.com. Pretty easy. And through the website, if you have inquiries, we have a little spot on there where you could email us and if you're interested in becoming a patient.
Yay. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time to chat with us, and hopefully we can have you on again soon.
Yeah, it was super fun to chat with you. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out the show notes at wave.ariestech.com.